Hello, everyone. Great to see you again for another Centering Discussions and the Global Center, our weekly series where we're chatting about numerous LGBTI plus inclusive topics. Happy Pride Month. So excited to have you here in this space, Centering Discussions. This is our third time doing this. So the first one was on parents and families during Global Parents Day on June 1st, the start of Pride Month. Our second one we did was last week with Kai, our COO, where we were chatting about pronouns, talking about our experience using pronouns and things happening in different contexts. And today, Jorge in Mexico is joining our live chat to talk about masculinity. Adding him right now. Talking about masculinity. Adding, so excited. Come on, Facebook, I'm excited. Why so slow? Adding. Oh, the anticipation is getting to me. Oh no. Okay, well, while Jorge is joining our call, we talk more about Pride Month. Hey, Jorge. Hey, I see you watching. There's an option to bring you on camera. Bring them on camera. Love the gender neutral option. Yay! You're here!
Hey, how are you, Cody? So good to
I'm so
see
excited
you.
So excited to see you. Good morning in Mexico City, right? It's morning for you, right?
That's it. Yeah, it's almost noon. I mean, almost uh, midday, and yeah, it's a bright day here in Mexico City. Now, I'm just learning how to use all of this technology and life, and yeah, but it's great to see you and join you. I hear myself like
Oh, echoing.
double. I don't know why.
Can you hear yourself now? Double. Can you test and see again?
Can you hear me now? Yeah, that's it.
Okay, awesome. Happy Pride Month.
Yay! I love June. It's my birthday month. I still hear myself twice. I don't know why.
I'm not sure why
But that's
either.
fine. Never mind.
Okay. Let me move somewhere else and see if that helps, yeah? So before you were coming on, I was telling our people watching on live stream that it's our third centering discussions, and today we're talking about masculinity.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, I love these topics. And yeah, it's very interesting to be able to speak about masculinity as a whole, but it's still learning about identities, no roles, no, and how we define a society specific concepts and how that has an impact in institutions, which is the topic that I love the most. How we can advocate for a brighter and better future with using the actors that are around us.
Yeah, love. So then can I ask you, what does masculinity mean to you? How would you define masculinity yourself?
Okay, so well, masculinity is it's a cultural construction. No, it is a concept that is socially constructed and reproduced, and it can be an identity, no, which is explored throughout our life. Um, so yeah, it's something that it's shaped by the state, no, many other institutions, the church, the society as a whole, family. They are always explaining and shaping and reinforcing what it means to have a masculine attitude, no, to have a masculine personality, no. And I believe it is an important concept because it's useful for us to have a word to define what it means to have those specific attitudes and characteristics that are socially constructed, yeah, but that are useful for, yeah, defining, no, specific scenarios, no. The thing is that we as societies also believe that if something is out of those list of elements that we have identified that comprise masculinity, then that's not, no, um, that's not what as a society is accepted, or is yeah, that is as a it is a conduct that is approved in that sense of masculinity. And that has a meaning when we are thinking about masculinity as a primary characteristic of men, right? And if men are not conducting in a way that is um, socially approved or socially constructed, then you are not accepted or approved as a man that can be yeah, delivering also the expected outcomes that as society we have constructed, but also not uh, fulfilling the role that has been um, uh, delineated, no, as such. What do you think about
Yeah.
this definition?
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. You roles, expectations, the norms we create around it. I was reading the plug for our article that we're drafting right now and hopefully soon will be published about like how it when you don't adhere to this construct, like how it leads to like in schools, like school-based violence or bullying or harassment, try and like shape students, our friends, peers' attitudes and ways of behaving based off that.
That is true, and we tend to think about the risks of masculinity in our daily lives, no, and how violence can be expressed through masculinity. Because, and again, this is a cultural construction, so it varies from society to society, from nation to nation. But in general terms, we tend to make a connection, no, between an aggressive, a violent attitude and behavior with masculinities, no, and that is also risky because it is an attitude that reinforces also a position of power, no, in relation to the others. And we tend to think about this situation, for example, in the family, no, or in yeah, in at work, no, and how a masculine attitude can be aggressive against others. But when we tend to think about masculinity, when as we have learned about it, no, as uh, a concept to describe, yeah, a violent, no, an approach that is not necessarily um, considering empathy, for example, no, or considering um, yeah, like a more horizontal way of relating to others, no. And yeah, and when we are not, and or we have as or men are not behaving in that way, in which masculinity is defined, then you can also receive violence from society, as in schools or as in any other spaces, and how yeah, your the lack of some elements in your characteristics or in your behavior or in your in daily attitude is repressed, and it's yeah.
Yeah, that freedom, that freedom.
Let
Like,
men be however they want.
yeah. Uh, So this, I mean, we've been having these conversations, but we also launched a social campaign in English and in Thai about what is a real man. And I feel like in the States, like a real man is that rugged individualist, that like cowboy, always with a like with a gun, like I don't know, and then all these behaviors of like I've heard in like Brazilian culture, like having the beard is more masculine. Uh, it's everything of like, do you cry during movies or do you use moisturizer on your hands at night or like all these behaviors about what's masculine versus feminine traits.
Yeah, here in Mexico we have I don't know if you know this about this concept is that is macho, no, which is a specific attitude in men, no, that is with all of these elements that you are mentioning, no? And sometimes it is characterized as such, and people that are also yeah, carrying, no, even specific elements such as even a hat, no, a hat gives you leadership, no, it gives you status, no, and
Well,
that is also about a macho, no, but machos also behave in a specific way, no, and they treat women and treat children in a specific way. And if you in Mexico and for many years, if you were distant to that concept and to that behavior, then you were not a macho, and then you were not a man, no, um, because being a man meant being a macho, and that reality has been changing during the last decades, mainly because of the feminist movement, yeah, and
yeah,
how they have highlighted the necessity to change the concept, the concepts that we as society have constructed on specific identities and attitudes and roles, and but also the LGBT community, and, and showing how diversity is an important factor in our identities, and that there are many ways of being a man, no, there are wider elements that must be considered um, for defining masculinity, no, and that, well, yeah, that we must change roles, and we must expand the roles that we are today doing in order to understand, no, the scenario that other people can be facing. So yeah, I think
yeah,
that those are really good advances, and that has also shaped and changed the way that we see what a real man means, no, is defined.
yeah. So in that redefining masculinity in Mexico, do like certain things come to mind or like maybe social campaigns or big moments for you?
Oof. I have
I put you
like
on.
specific moments but in political scenarios,
Yeah,
no, and where, yeah, like, and we have seen a lot of gender violence in the political scene, no, and how in Mexico, and how the being a woman is a barrier, no, for accessing political positions, but
yeah,
mainly because of the masculine attitudes of men in the power who are using violent means, no, to reinforce their power and prevent other people's violence. So, and that is something that has been legislated recently, but has happened during the last, yeah, legislating to sanction, no, those situations, and but has been existing during for many decades, but something that has been very uh, evident, for example, during the last years, is the change in the political discourse on visibilizing, no, visibilizing men and women in discourses and in government actions. So for me, that was like a cornerstone, no, on the difference on showing how we as or men as people in power can visibilize a necessity, no, can punctualize the presence of other identities. And yeah, of course, that is something that can be extended to public policies, no? But yeah, in the political discourse, we have changed like a lot of how we are mentioning and how we are approaching to gender topics, no? Of course, we need a lot of more exercises in the public discourse and in the public action on how we can reflect, no, as society on all of those concepts and situations and roles and elements that as society we have defined and constructed for each of these identities, no? So yeah, yeah, something.
Do you feel like so within Mexico, the diversity of all of the like national, all of the states, like is there variation in states in like defining masculinity and or like progress on redefining masculinity?
Yeah, and the thing is also that I embrace multiculturality a lot, no? And 50 to 15 to 20% of population in Mexico are from indigenous roots, no? Originary um, populations, and they have um, practices that can be very risky, no? And in terms of masculinity and roles for men, people. Um, and one of them, for example, is the selling, no, women, for example, who want who for marriage, for example, no, or in exchange of money or political advances in sometimes. And that is a tradition, no? That is something that families have done for many years, and in many contexts, and neighbors are doing the same, no? And if you as a leader or as someone in that wants to be included in the community, you you think about the options of doing that, no? But I believe that despite cultural practices or traditional views, human rights and equality uh, must be the center of every social relationship, no? And those practices are not based on equality. So I believe that, yeah, there are like many other examples that can be and are, which are extended to the macho culture, um, but that must be addressed, no, and prevented. And yeah, education has a key role in providing the tools and the necessary um, elements and processes for delivering better outcomes on this sense.
Yeah. I love what you said earlier about feminist movements and leading the charge and LGBTI plus groups. I feel like there's been waves, but another wave is definitely when Donald Trump was running for president and became president for 4 years. And it really made us question like, is this for many people, that's what being macho and masculine, like that was the prize. And or like locker room talk or boys will be boys. And then the whole for now continued response, like it led many people to speak up. The Women's March happened the day after. like social campaigns through all of these companies, the Me Too movement, all of these things that led from this violent jolt, right?
And that's the thing, no? Like the iconic models that we have shaped as societies, no, as institutions, and that are presented to us as the role, no, or as a role model, no, to
Yeah.
which we should aspire. Um, and we tend to believe that that will end when we when we see a woman, no, in the power, for example, no, as a president of the US, no, or when we see a woman in a leadership position in the private industry, for example, no, but not necessarily does not necessarily mean that risky, and I don't like to speak about toxic masculinity because I think that it's stigmatizing. I would say that it's a risky masculinity, no, of because masculinity has outcomes such as um, autocratical, no, governments, for example, no, or autocratical hierarchical systems, no, or in unequal societies based on the violence that is used to reinforce the masculine behavior, no? So for me, those are risks, no, that we should prevent with a healthy masculinity, no? But a woman in power or a woman in leadership does not necessarily mean a healthy or a healthy uh, regime, no? Because masculinities are extended to the behavior of all of us because we are living in a patriarchal system, no? And we've learned these attitudes throughout our life. Uh, so that, and this is important, this is relevant because I believe that the tendency or the trend is that men will be in power, no, and men are in power in many areas in the world, no, and we need to teach those men and women who will be in power how to build a healthier masculinity among society, how to behave uh, more, more based on uh, empathetic and lovely and horizontal and uh, and all of those attitudes that are lacking in the masculinity concept, no, and how we can embrace those processes and communicate it in our leadership positions, and that is a task for men and for women in power and for the models that we are building in our everyday lives.
It's like, what if we taught this in school, like a healthy form of like gender and sexuality education? Like, imagine a healthy form of this in a comprehensive way that, like, we learn about this, obviously, if we didn't learn about it, but we learn about it, I guess, in the hidden curriculum, right? And informally.
Absolutely. And risky masculinity is about not knowing how to speak about corporalities, no, sexuality, identities, lacking tools for mediating conflicts, no, and for promoting respect and for demanding respect also, no. And so that is all of those concepts are something that can be addressed, no, in the education field, and that will deliver better outcomes not only in terms of a healthier masculinity, no, but as a whole in how we can build communities that are based on necessities and on um, um, healthy relationships rather than on a hostile and aggressive approach, which is which is the norm right now, no? And how on the approximation of our immediate circle. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And shout out to like Thai context. I feel like I want to shout out to also changing the way we construct language, like how we define, because in Thai context, there's like first sex, pet nung is like male, female, and then LGBT or pet T Sam, which is like the third sex. And so like any like LGBT people cannot are not real men in that way of thinking. And for some that's okay and empowering, and for some that's incredibly limiting and not okay and discriminatory. And but
Yeah.
it's like I'll never be a real man because the way our culture and society constructs the language.
And that's like a double we
It's
must take into consideration the double scenarios there, no? Because on the one side, it is very useful to have a public policy approach that recognizes the existence of these identities and that can provide specific services and rights, no, for that population that is already mentioned and visibilized. However, it's not accurate, no, because many LGBT identities identify themselves as men, of course. So yeah, and that's importance also for of participating, no, and for formulating policies that are adequate to the populations and that are considering their voices, no, because if LGBT people had been involved in those processes, we the Thai society probably would have a better way of delimiting, no, those and highlighting the needs of those populations. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And something like with my experience of like now identifying as gender fluid, I've always thought until this last year, because of a lack of education, that it was only a spectrum on masculine or feminine. And I didn't know you could blow up the whole thing and be non-binary. I'm like, yes, this is awesome.
It's
So
true.
yeah.
It's very interesting. Yeah, here in Mexico we have uh, we have only the possibility of changing birth certificates, no, but in a binary system, no. And if you want to change, you can only have two options, no, either choosing men or male or female or men or women or man or woman in the registry, no. However, we are or advocates are proposing and they are um, uh, achieving that their government ID specifies a third check mark or a third option saying non-binary, no? Also because that is a more accurate, like non-binary is about gender identities, it's not confusing sexual orientations in between, and it is an umbrella term, no? So gender fluids, so yeah, queer people can check that mark, no, on the non-binary identity when they are not identified as men or women. Mm-hmm.
But what's the status on that?
It is advancing. Yeah, people have their, but you need to people have government IDs with that, but you need
Oh,
a judicial process, no, to present a demand, no. Mhm. Yeah, but it's a beginning, no, and afterwards it will become an administrative process, no. Mhm.
I mean, this is really good, but I'm just thinking of like, you need to have access to legal stuff. It feeds into the bureaucratic state. So I I have a critical mindset right now, but it's a really big advancement. It really is.
Oh yeah, of course. But that's a first step for visibilizing that there is a whole population that needs, no, all of those services and rights. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that we need to do much more, no, for deconstructing the binary system. But first steps are, yeah, very important to start this process.
Yay. Thanks for going live with me today. Do you have any other things you want to share about masculinity?
Well, I would only ask people to make a commitment on these topics, no, and there are healthy forms of masculinity, no, of identifying with this, um, with the roles associated, no, to masculinity and with the behavior associated to masculinity. But we can do that in a healthy way, no, and for that we need to reflect, of course, the impacts of our actions, but to commit ourselves, no, to explore innovative forms of relating to each other, no, of taking leadership, no, of protecting the people that you love, no, and we need to be distant to the behaviors and attitudes that use violence as the primary mean for achieving your goals. And for me, it is also important to think about, like, the, I just want to close with this, the um, care system, no, in our society, no, and women are having a lot of um, spending a lot of time, no, in care tasks, no, in um, building a good home, no, or um, uh, with the children, no, and the necessary
Yeah.
tasks for that. Men should explore how masculinity can be shaped do, doing all of those tasks and roles that are traditionally um, appointed for women and that are mainly under the care system. No? So, yeah, so just exploring new spaces where we can develop ourselves, if we want to explore other identities, other ways of conducting ourselves and behavior, that is also very useful and fine for exploring a better ourselves, no, and how we like to conduct ourselves, and if we really like to um, uh, yeah, to behave in a determined role. Mm-hmm.
I so echo that, especially with COVID. Now some countries are starting to reopen, and I feel like this is the perfect time as you resume going back out, like to first reflect and see like what are some things that aren't helpful in my home, in my society, and how can we transform starting at home, and that leads and like creates better relationships, create better home environments, communication, all of that.
That is true. Yeah, we have a really good opportunity to reflect on what we are doing right, that we are doing that is delivering the expected outcomes, the outcomes that we want, and how we can change our behavior to achieve our goals, no, and as societies and as families and as individuals. So thank you very
Yeah.
much for this conversation, Cody. It was nice to see you in my morning.
Yay! Thank you so much for joining, and I hope you have a great day. Happy birthday month. Happy Pride month.
Thank you. See you later,
Thank
Cody.
you. See you
Bye.
later.